Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central. It's the In Wheel Time car talk show. Coming up, we talk with Robert Hanfield to get his thoughts on the current UAW strike. Conrad has This Week in Auto History, and we'll get you caught up on the stories making car news this week. Howdy along with Mike out of This World Mars. King Conrad DeLong. We always need more Jeff Zekin. I'm Don Armstrong. Glad you could join us on this Saturday as our show comes to its last 30 minutes for the week.
The equinox is today. It's the first day of fall today?
Yeah,
at noon or 2?
Autumnal equinox. Autumnal equinox. The days and the nights are equal length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sun's going to be at the equator.
Yes, we're at the equator.
Yeah, that's good because it's only going to get 97, so it's got to be the fall.
It's got to be. Yep, I'm thinking
it's cooling off already.
Already, I mean, it's a cool
battery-operated socks.
The first week of the UAW strike against the Detroit Three is projected to result in $1.6 billion in economic losses, according to estimates by East Lansing-based Anderson Economic Group. This story from Automotive News. But with 38 more parts distribution centers joining the strike yesterday across the U.S., that amount is expected to grow exponentially. So far, the losses have been concentrated in Michigan, Indiana, Alabama, Kansas, Missouri, and Ohio, where plants are shuttered over the strike. UAW Sean Fain announced new locations walking off the job in 20 different states on Friday, including 6 GM facilities and 7 Stellantis centers in Michigan. Ford Motor Company was spared as negotiations, I guess, have progressed there. Some 5,600 additional workers have now joined the strike on top of the 13,000 of the 146,000 members who began the strike a week ago. The new GM sites employ roughly 3,400 workers, including 1,600 near Flint. The Stellantis sites employ about 2,100 workers. Rob Hanfield is the Bank of America University Distinguished Professor of Supply Chain Management at North Carolina State University and Executive Director of the Supply Chain Resource Cooperative, and he's considered a thought leader in the field of supply chain management. And, sir, we certainly welcome you to the show, and thank you very much for joining us from, I guess you're in the Carolinas.
Yeah, I'm in Raleigh. That's right. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the show again. I was on, I think, last month, and it's great to be here with this gang of rogues that you have with you.
Yes, he's been here before. You have us figured out well.
Oh, we're representing now.
Yeah, we are. We're representing. That's it. So I have said from the very beginning when this is all we heard rumors that this was going to take place, and then it came to fruition, and now they're out on strike. And all I could think of is not necessarily, and we, at least in my age group, we always think of assembly plants as manufacturing plants, and all they really are today is assemble parts and pieces that are made from companies all over the world, basically, to put together the car that you go out and buy. And my concern has really been with those little companies that are down on the food chain that may have 100, 200, 300 employees at the most, and those guys are going to be affected the worst, aren't they, Robert?
Well, that's absolutely right. The way, there's a lot of components in any vehicle, as you know, and a lot of the direct shipments to the assembly facilities are what they call tier 1 suppliers. And those are the big ones like Magma, Lear, JCI, and so forth. And so they manage a whole hundreds, or more than hundreds, thousands of tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. And those are the ones that produce, the tooling, the jigs, the nuts and the bolts and the screws and the plastic injection molds. All of those components are produced by these small, really mom and pop shops that really rely on the automotive companies for their business. And they're going to be the ones that are going to shut down because the tier 1s are on what they call a just-in-time system where they're delivering directly to the assembly line. So when the assembly line shuts down, that just-in-time system shuts down and they stop buying parts. So yeah, it's the little guys that are going to get really hurt by
And
this.
all it takes is really, I mean, we learned this particularly with the microchip shortage that happened. You know, as some little plastic part that may go on the dashboard. Well, doesn't that shut down the factory just like an engine component does? Because they can't complete the entire car.
Well, that's absolutely right. Yeah, you only need one part to shut down an assembly. And, you know, the problem is, you know, these small companies, you know, they're some of them are living hand to mouth. You know, they don't have a lot of cash flow. You know, they don't have a lot of working capital. So, you know, when they stop getting paid or they stop having orders come in, they got to lay off workers. And when they start laying off workers, it's really hard, you know, to start them back up again. It's easy to shut down, but it's really difficult to get all the people back and you know, the machinery and the equipment moving again.
How long do you see this strike lasting?
You know, it's I can tell you, I think it depends. You know, I think Ford, from what I hear, Ford is going to be the first one. They may be very close to an agreement with Ford. And the reason with that, Ford of the big three probably has the best relationship with the UAW. You know, they're the biggest employer over the years. You know, they've really developed a good relationship with the UAW. Believe it or not, William Ford actually plays hockey with the UAW workers. You can imagine that. I wonder if he gets a few body checks and boards, right?
Just a few.
But you know, they do try to maintain good relations. Fine has actually, if you notice, he hasn't said a lot of bad things about Ford. So, you know, I think they're pretty close to an agreement with Ford.
And historically, Ford and the UAW have been more friendly towards each other as opposed to GM, who can be quite combative with the UAW.
Yeah, that you're absolutely right. And of the three, the worst of the three is Stellantis. And the reason is they've got a guy, you know, their CEO Tavares is European. He's from Portugal. He is used to dealing with the unions in Europe. He lives in Europe, and he's a hard-nosed negotiator. He doesn't want to give anything to the unions. And he's proposed the least amount in terms of pay raises. And, you know, he's a union buster. He doesn't like working with the unions. So they're probably the furthest away. And what's interesting is, you know, Fine was also an electrician on a Chrysler assembly line in Kokomo years ago. So, you know, he's closest to Chrysler Big Three.
And it seems like the UAW is looking for the weak links in the supply chain to try and impact those. That's going to spread their strike force to a greater degree. You know, we did a story earlier about the ZF plant, the axle plant going on strike, and how that's going to impact Mercedes-Benz, who's not a UAW assembly facility, but how it's going to affect their ability to deliver vehicles. So, you know, they're trying to spread their tentacles beyond just the UAW assembly plants outside of the big three.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so they want to create as much damage as possible. You know, they're also striking at the truck and SUV plants because that's where the big three really make their money, right? SUVs and trucks are their big time sellers. They make the biggest profit margins on those platforms. And that's exactly where they're hitting them right where it hurts.
What are the questions that you're getting now? What are the most of the questions that you're getting now regarding the strike and the supply chain?
Well, you know, I think, you know, people are asking how long is it going to last and what's going to be the impact on the economy. Impact on the economy could be bad. I will say, you know, the big three, they have about 60 to 70 days of finished goods inventory. So they've been loading up on inventory knowing that this strike was coming. So the dealers are probably going to be okay for, you know, 4 or 5 weeks out. You know, they'll have product on the lot. Once they get out there, then you're going to start to see shortages. And what you'll then see is dealers are going to start raising prices by as much as 10, I've heard even 20%. So you're going to see more inflation in the automotive sector. And that means used car prices are also going to go up.
Right.
The other big thing that you mentioned earlier is, the distributors. If you're not distributing parts, then all the dealers are going to get hit because of they're not going to be able to service cars. If your car's in the shop and they don't have a part for it, you're out of luck. You're going to be driving a rental for a while.
And I'm seeing that for what I do right now, is some of the dealers, because if you look at the industry, GM distributes to dealerships, but you've always got in each of these big towns, you've got 1, 2, or 3 dealerships that become the distributor for General Motors. They're the big parts player in town, and there's 3 or 4 of them here in Houston that are kind of the big parts players here in town. And they are starting to pull back on allowing other dealers to select from their inventory because they want to retain what parts they do have for their customers, and they don't want to run out too early for their customers. So it's impacting, even at the parts level, far greater than just the UAW. It's impacting at the dealer level as well.
Well, not just at the dealer level, but think about it. Think about how many trucks are on the road, how many Ford, GM, Chrysler trucks are on the road. And if you start, putting those warranty parts, they're now unavailable, and you have trucks that break down and they can't get parts, you're going to have logistics and warehouse distribution problems as well now too. So, the automotive sector, people don't realize how it really impacts every part of the economy. And, this strike is really hurting a lot of different people, not just the big 3.
And some of the people are going to go out, as you spoke earlier, they're going to shut down, and they're never going to come back. And that's going to be very impactful because the widget that they built may never come back into production. And that's going to have a long-term effect on the business, and those people are going to go find another job.
Mike talked about that with his part.
Yeah. Let me ask you, we're going into the last quarter of the year in a week. And do you think that the holidays coming up are going to play a part in maybe perhaps ending the strike? Hey, it's getting close to Christmas. I need my job back. I need to have some income. We need to settle this thing before Christmas.
Well, that may be a factor. The other people that are impacted, believe it or not, are the UAW workers themselves. They're getting a little check, from the UAW. It's not their full paycheck. They're not getting any overtime pay, that's for sure. And so, they're going to start scrimping as well, and they don't want to go into Christmas, being broke. A lot of those workers, really rely on that monthly paycheck. The other thing that, people have to realize is the big 3 have other options. If you start putting 40% wage increases and a 32-hour work week, imagine what that's going to do to the price of vehicles in general if they just cave in and give them all that. And you know what? There's some really big manufacturing sites in Mexico. I've been down there to Saltillo and Pueblo.
And Silao.
And like Stellantis has extra capacity down there. And so it's, in the longer term, they could turn around and say, yeah, we'll give you what we want, but we're gonna move these jobs to Mexico. And that's a distinct possibility that the union needs to be thinking about.
And start paying them in pesos.
Well, and he also said the head of Stellantis is a hard negotiator. So that's it's very, very possible.
It is very possible. And I've been to those sites down there, and people work hard. They work for less money. There's no unions, and they're happy for the work. So, and they're very good. I mean, the vehicle I drive is assembled in Mexico. Works great. So, they got to be careful about what they're looking at here.
Yeah, because not only are they trying to get more for the UAW, they're going to damage America, and in turn damage themselves as the big 3 start offshoring more and more production.
Yeah, and I've been looking at the demands the UAW is making. I think that the big three is offering them 20%, which I think is good. They're also offering them a cost of living adjustment, which says, we're gonna map it to the consumer price index. If the CPI goes up, then we'll give you a raise. This 32-hour work week. What planet are you on? This is the United States. No one works 32 hours, right? We all work 40, 50, 60 hours.
Exactly.
Well, my view of that is they want a 32-hour work week so they can continue to work 40 hours and get an additional 8 hours overtime at time and a half. So, that's the compounding cost of labor is impossible to recover on the price of the vehicle at General Motors and Ford and Stellantis. This is going to really push the price of cars way, way up. If you think $100,000 Suburban is expensive today, what are you going to think in 3 years if they give in and all of a sudden the cost of the average cost of a Suburban is now $150,000? And people start moving away, and this is, I said this last week as well, when the inventory wanes at the dealerships, people are going to go start buying other brands. And my personal opinion, they're never going to come back to the big three if they try some of these other brands that are available on the market that are not being impacted by the UAW strike.
I would.
Rob, do you think that the UAW is kind of really at the end of its era? Do you think that is it the end is near for the UAW?
Well, I think what happened is, the UPS caved into the Teamsters,
right?
Gave them everything they wanted. So the UAW looked at that and says, "Hey, why can't we do that?
We want ours."
Yeah, and so they were very much encouraged by the Teamsters. Some of the things they're looking for, they want a defined pension plan. They haven't had pensions around since the 40s or 50s. The big three are offering, 401k contributions, which is what everybody else in the country gets. Why are they different? Why do they get a guaranteed pension? Those guaranteed pensions, they go bankrupt usually. People, you look at CalPERS, look at some of the ones that are out there. They're not doing so good.
Well, I don't know. It just seems. I understand the UAW. I mean, we studied it. We know all about it and the power that they have. But that was back in the day when General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford were pretty much the only car makers in the United States. That's not the case today. And a lot of these foreign car manufacturers, they're not part of the union at all, at any place. They manufacture them overseas or, like you said, down in Mexico.
Yeah, and I've also spent time studying some of these other automotive manufacturers. I spent time with Honda and Toyota, even Kia and BMW, Mercedes. One of the things these guys do is in all of those countries, there are very strong relationships between management and union. They don't let it get to this point. They spend a lot of time, talking to the union. The unions are allowed to be on their board. They're allowed to have a say on what's going on. They have feedback sessions from the unions. And if you look at it, these companies, they pay almost the same wages as the big three. They have the same, work conditions as a union. They just don't have a union. They have a worker representative council. So I think that's the difference is, the big three have kind of put themselves into this position because of the acrimonious relationship that they've had with the union over the years.
Yeah, the only time the negotiations happen with them is when they go on strike or just before they go on strike. And then it's all, everybody shows up to the meeting room with baseball bats trying to beat the daylights out of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and Sean Fine isn't making it easier. Usually these negotiations are sort of, back room, kind of more secretive. He comes right out and he's blasting them in public, which, you know, talk about losing face. That's not a great. That's really
that doesn't
not-
help.
Well, the other thing I see is the unions complaining about what their current contract is. Hey, fine's the one who negotiated that for you 4 or 5 years ago. You don't hold him accountable for it either.
Yeah. I mean, today they're making, the average union worker is making $60 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but that's not a bad wage, for no education.
I could live on that.
Yeah, plus medical, dental,
Yeah,
optical, all that.
Yeah.
All right.
401k contribution. That's a great wage.
And a discount in purchasing cars.
Rob,
Yeah.
it's great to talk to you. We thank you so much for taking the time out of your lunch here at the noon hour up there in the Carolinas, and best of luck to you. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us on all of this.
My pleasure. Have a great day, guys.
You do
Bye.
the same.
Thank you.
Rob Hanfield is his name, Bank of America University.
guy.
The smartest person on the show today.
There's no doubt about that. That's
Hey,
for sure. I wanted to tell you that Hyundai is sweetening the deal for car shoppers considering swapping for an all-electric lifestyle for buyers in certain markets who elect to purchase or lease a new, as you call it, how do you call it? Ioniq?
Ionic.
You call it Ionic. I call it Ioniq. Whatever. Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, or Kona Electric through its captive finance arm. Hyundai will include a free ChargePoint Level 2 home charger valued at $549 and a credit of $600 toward installation. Electric vehicle adoption has been growing but plateaued in the first half of this year. According to new vehicle registration data from Experian, EV share of the market rose steadily in 21 and 22, but has run consistently around 7% this year. Cooled demand suggests consumers are still hesitant to make the change. EVs require a high upfront cost compared with gasoline-powered vehicles. And macroeconomic factors such as higher interest rates coupled with tighter lending have sidelined many buyers. All right, time now for This Week in Auto History, and Conrad has that.
In 1920, the first Lincoln automobile was built. Henry Leland, who founded Lincoln Motor Company in 1917 to produce Liberty V-12 aircraft for the U.S. involvement in World War I. He got a $10 million government contract to produce those engines, and he went on and started Lincoln Motor Company. You got to remember, Henry Leland was also the one who founded Cadillac in 1903 as he left Ford and took a floundering version of Ford and built it into Cadillac brand.
And didn't go on strike.
In 1959, the Valiant for all was...
I like that car. That is me. It's you. It's
that is
me,
such
baby.
a cool car.
Yeah.
Tub it out.
Thank you,
and-
Mr. Peabody.
I'd tub it out and put a Hemi in it.
Sherman.
It was the entry level into the compact car market that was at the time dominated by the VW Beetle.
It's even my color.
And the original project name for that was the Falcon, but Ford beat Chrysler to the name by releasing the Falcon in 1959, ahead of them giving
That
them
car is
Valiant.
ugly.
That car is ugly, and actually, it didn't get the name Valiant until 1961.
It's a valiant idea.
Yeah, and it, the car was kind of the end of an era with the
No, it's
tail
not.
fins and the quad headlights and stuff.
They kind of went overboard on the fins.
It ended the era before they built it.
I like
In 1970, more than 50 years after his passing, Jimi Hendrix remains one of the most influential rock and roll musicians to have ever shredded a guitar.
Star Spangled Banner.
He purchased a Chevrolet Corvette as soon as his musical talents began to pay off. The story goes that he ordered the Corvette, the International Blue Corvette, from a Cleveland dealership in 1968. And when he took delivery of it, he didn't even have a driver's license. And that car to this day is still unaccounted for. So
They don't know where it is.
somewhere somebody has a blue Corvette in their garage that used to be Jimi Hendrix Corvette. In 1979, Lee Iacocca, who was the elected as chairman of Chrysler. Lee's career began at Ford Motor Company and would lead him to the top of Chrysler. As vice president of Ford, he led Ford through what I call the pony car era. You know, they had the Mustang, they had the Bronco, they had the Maverick, they had the Pinto. Lee Iacocca, and then he's gone on to hosting the rebuild of the Statue of Liberty. In 2006, skip this next picture too. In 2006, the 2006 Ford GT production ends. The Ford GT was originally a concept car shown by Ford in 2002, and in 2004, when it began production, that was one of the quickest concept to production cars ever out there, and has proven to be one of the best investment cars to make in the 2000s.
All right. Thank you, sir. We're going to take a quick break here, and we are going to be right back to wrap up today's show. You're on the In Will Time Car Talk Show on iHeartRadio. The original group of Loopy Tortilla restaurants will have you telling your family and friends just what the original recipes mean when it comes to the best fajitas in Southeast Texas. Founder Stan Holt invites you to visit the original Loopy Tortilla near I-10 and Highway 6. Here's the original house that inspired the design of all the rest and the original charm that helped make Loopy Tortilla the go-to destination for Houston Tex-Mex. Speaking of original, nothing can compete with the original lime pepper marinade that everyone will agree makes Loopy Tortilla award-winning beef fajitas the best anywhere. Loopy Tortilla Katy is another location that gives you the same quality and service Houstonians have come to expect at Loopy's. It's located just off I-10 and the Grand Parkway at Kingsland Boulevard in Katy. Find yourself in Aggie Land? Head to the Loopy Tortilla in College Station, located just around the corner from Kyle Field. It's a great place to enjoy those famous frozen margaritas before or after the game. Headed east to Louisiana, stop in at the Loopy Tortilla in Beaumont. It too's on I-10. You can't miss it. The original group of Loopy Tortilla restaurants invites you in for the best Tex-Mex anywhere. You own a car you love. Well, why not let Gulf Coast Auto Shield protect it? Houstonian John Gray invites you to his state-of-the-art facility to introduce you to his specialist team of auto enthusiasts. We promise you'll be impressed. Whether you're looking to massage your original paint to a like-new appearance, apply a ceramic coating, install a paint protection film, nano-ceramic window tint, or new windshield protection called ExoShield, Gulf Coast Auto Shield is where Houston's car people go. Curbed your wheels? Instead of buying new, why not have them repaired? How about a professionally installed radar detector? Gulf Coast Auto Shield does that too. Get a peek inside the shop and look at the services offered by getting online and heading to gcautoshield.com. Better yet, stop by their facility at 11275 South Sam Houston Tollway, just south of the Southwest Freeway, and get a personal tour. Gulf Coast Auto Shield is your place to go for all things exterior. Call them today, 832-930-5655 or gcautoshield.com. The award-winning In Real Time Car Talk Show is available on the most popular podcast channels out there in 30-minute episodes. We realize our 3-hour live show can be difficult to catch in its entirety, so now you can listen every day to a convenient, fresh 30-minute episode. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible, along with a dozen more. In Real Time has the most informative automotive guest interviews and new car reviews, along with popular features including Conrad's Car Clinic and This Week in Auto History, along with automotive news headlines. Our live broadcast airs every Saturday, 8 to 11 Central on inrealtime.com, the iHeart app, and on YouTube. Be sure to say hello when we're broadcasting from the Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise Inn, Autorama, and the Houston Auto Show, among others. Now, it's easier than ever to hear about all things automotive all week long. You're invited to join fellow car enthusiasts in becoming part of the ever-growing In Real Time Car Talk family. Don't forget those 30-minute podcast episodes on your favorite podcast channel. Well, that's it for this week's In Real Time Car Talk Show. If you haven't already, here's your invitation to follow us on Facebook. Give us a like, tell your friends about us, and share our stuff if you would, please. We'll keep you posted on all things automotive all week long, including new car reviews, upcoming events, cruise-ins, racing events, car, truck, and SUV goodies, and more. You can find the In Real Time Car Talk Show 24/7 through the iHeartRadio app. We live video stream this show on Facebook, YouTube, and inrealtime.com every Saturday, 8 to 11 Central, if you so dare to choose our live stream. Daily 30-minute podcasts available from your favorite podcast supplier. The In Real Time Chief Engineer is David Ainsley. Our marketing advertising advisor and video technical director is all we always need more Jeff Zekin. For booking agent, Zoom manipulator, Mike Mars, Mr. Know-It-All, and Facebook fiend, his royalty king Conrad DeLong. I'm Don Armstrong. We hope you join us for another live award-winning production of the In Real Time Car Talk Show next Saturday, when we'll be at Woody's Waterfront Car Show in San Leon, Texas. And it will be on all of our In Real Time Car Talk outlets right here on the fabulous Smoke and Mirrors Network. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. That's it for this podcast episode of the In Wheel Time Car Show. I'm Don Armstrong, inviting you to join us for our live show every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our InWheelTime.com website. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Podcast, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, Pandora,